Okay, everybody, David Parsons here. This is Nostalgia Trap. Thanks so much for tuning into the show. I hope you enjoy what we've got for you today. Today we're talking about bars and restaurants in the age of pandemic. Now, I don't know about you, but even before the pandemic, I was always very conflicted about bars and restaurants. On the one hand, I grew up, not going to restaurants all that often. So when we did, it was really special. And I invest, and I think still do invest a lot of romance in the sort of social space and social and even political potential of a place where people can gather and eat together and drink together and talk and socialize and all that stuff. I still really love that. And I think a lot of us do. But at the same time, as I began working in restaurants as a teenager and in my 20s, working at all sorts of different restaurants, from small diners to big corporate chain restaurants to even, fancy steakhouses, restaurants became much more complicated things for me, especially as you see the back of the house and you see restaurants and bars as, just like any other capitalist institution, sites of deep exploitation. And especially as I got older and I was reading while working at restaurants, I was reading stuff like Howard Zinn and Noam Chomsky and other stuff about capitalism and history and labor. Restaurants became places that had a sort of, they represented maybe the best and worst of what a society can be. And places, again, that I feel really conflicted about, and I think that all of us do. So now we're in the age of pandemic, when restaurants and bars have become these sort of testing grounds for lockdown policy and quarantine policy and that sort of thing. And it's just been really awful to watch. And I don't speak for everyone else. I mean, this is my own attitude towards it, but I haven't been to bars and restaurants since the pandemic began, even when they started serving outside like they're doing in my town in Ventura, California now. I just, for whatever reason, I can't fathom the idea of sitting outside and having a server in a mask and gloves bring me food and drinks. I'm just not ready for that. And for me, it's like part of that is because the pandemic has like really stripped the restaurant and bar down to its to just the exploitation. That's all that's left, just the skeleton that's left. In other words, all the romance of it is gone, the social space is gone, and all we have is a sort of grim reality that is capitalism, which is working people being shoved out into danger so that some rich guy somewhere can collect the profits. And that part of it is really, really ugly and something that I haven't been able to participate in. But again, I feel conflicted about that because there are people I know that work at restaurants and that, need the business and are part of that economy and part of that real ecology of restaurant work. So it's tough. I wanted to have a conversation about this on Nostalgia Trap. So this conversation is with a friend of mine, Sean Lawrence. Sean is someone I met because he's a bartender and restaurant manager at a number of the coolest, hippest, most popular bars and restaurants downtown in Ventura, California. And we get into, in this conversation, catching up. I've been dying to hear what it's been like and his perspective from inside these bars and restaurants where I've seen a lot of people piling up and also a lot of really insane controversies, including around like things like Black Lives Matter and wearing masks and who polices that. So, and I've seen that on social media. So this was a really a fun and illuminating and sometimes disturbing conversation as Sean gives us a sort of point of view from inside these places and what people are going through and what especially the workers are going through, whether they're in the front of the house or the back of the house or even in management. There are all different challenges that these institutions are facing. And I think that we come around to the same conclusion we've been coming to in a lot of these episodes, which is whatever the pandemic is, it's stripping things down and making things very clear on the scale of the political and on the scale of how these institutions work. And if anything, maybe there's an opportunity to sort of reflect on what matters to us about these places in the first place. So, Sean Lawrence, thanks for joining us. It's a really fun conversation. We'll get to that in a second. Also want to make you aware for if you're a subscriber to Nostalgia Trap, we've got some new content coming this week, including a conversation with Linda Tirado. We talked to her a few months ago, I think last year. But since that conversation, she's been blinded by the police. There's no other way to put it. She was shot at a protest, at a George Floyd protest in Minneapolis. And she's one of 34 different people at these George Floyd protests, Black Lives Matter protests, who've been blinded by police fire. So it's a really intense conversation, and I wanted to catch up with her. So that's for subscribers only. Go to patreon.com/nostalgiatrap, and you can get access to those episodes and all the stuff we're putting up on there, including new episodes with Justin Rogers Cooper and Dan Bessner, a bunch of other fun stuff. So now's the time to join. If you want to support our show, I could really use it. Patreon.com/nostalgiatrap. Okay, let's get to it. Thanks so much for everyone that's supporting the show. Enjoy this conversation. Here is me talking with Sean Lawrence. All right. Well, Sean Lawrence, it's been a while since I've seen your face because you're a person who works at a couple different places in town that I used to drink at before the pandemic came, and now we don't see each other. I only see you on social media, so it's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too, man. Yeah, it's been interesting to say the least.
I bet. I mean, we've been talking about a lot in the show, kind of the perspective of service workers, because we're like, I don't know. I spent the first probably 10 years of my working life in restaurants, and it was, for me, like a formative experience. In a lot of ways, I feel like even though I went and like became a teacher, like my heart is still with the restaurant folk and understanding kind of what that world is like. But at the same time, I'm watching this happen, and I'm just like, God, it looks so hard. I mean, maybe you can walk us through, like, at the beginning of this, if you remember. It seems like months ago.
Yeah,
but like, what?
Vivid memory.
Yeah, what? How did you first like understand that something was going to change? Because you're someone, just to give people a little bit of background, you're someone who I feel like is tapped into the sort of restaurant culture, bar culture downtown in our town, which is Ventura, California, and someone that kind of, I feel like, has a little bit of a command of the zeitgeist, the feeling of what's down there. But what was the vibe like as this was starting to unfold?
Yeah, I think a lot of us kind of like saw it happening, and we were just kind of like, oh, this is going to be like whatever happened last year or like the year before. It's not gonna impact us. We might see like a little bit of fluctuation within business, people trying to be careful, but then it just kind of like took off. I remember it was around St. Patrick's Day, which is like obviously a huge drinking holiday, and it was just quiet, just quiet, like dead. And then we get the news from our bosses like, hey, like they just told us to shut down, like we're all shutting down. So I think a lot of us were just kind of shocked that was happening, because we never saw that coming. We just kind of thought it was like one of these waves. You hear about these diseases and viruses starting in other countries and kind of spreading, but it's usually like nipped in the bud pretty quickly.
Yep.
Or it's just not, people don't care, but obviously this one was like huge, and just never seen anything like that before happen in this type of industry. So we were shocked for sure. And like, well, what do we do now? Like, I guess, do we have jobs? Do we not? Like, how long is this going to be? Like, are we going to be able to just relax for a bit and this is going to blow over? And we're 5-6 months into this now that things are just starting to loosen up, and it's just going back and forth. So yeah, at the beginning, shock for sure, not really knowing what to do, just kind of thinking it was going to blow over pretty quickly.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like a lot of us in the United States felt that way, where it's just kind of like there's this incredulity, like, we've seen this a million times with different monkey poxes and bird flus and viruses that you hear. It's funny because it's like we feel so immune to it, but not anymore. I mean, and those first couple days, I first couple weeks even, I mean, in terms of jobs, where people like what happened with that? Because it feels like people did lose their jobs, I'm assuming, right? Yeah,
I mean, for the establishments I'm at, we definitely it was just day by day, man. It's like either like we're gonna hold on to them or not, and then it just got to a certain point where my bosses informed me like, hey, got to lay some people off. Like, we're not going to be open, obviously. So it's just like sending a mass email out, which feels really informal to me. I don't like to do things like that, but you got to in that situation. So yeah, a lot of people lost their jobs in the process, and yeah, it wasn't fun, man. It's not ever fun to be on that side of it.
Yeah, dude, I have a friend that works at like a high-end steakhouse type restaurant in New York City, like
Hmm.
in Manhattan, and he waits on like all these people from Fox News and shit because Fox News is like right across the street, and it's like this really crowded steakhouse. They had 55 servers and they have 6 now as they do like takeout, and I'm like, that's insane. Like 55 servers, they were all making good money,
Yeah.
are just gone. And then, I mean, was there a discussion? Because this is the part of it that's hard. It's like, what is everyone doing? I mean, I assume you still are in contact with some of these people. How are people
Yeah.
surviving?
Yeah. So we have a smaller staff. I think for us it was 33 people on our staff, and now we have five people.
Holy
working during this
shit,
time.
man.
Yeah.
That's insane.
And that's taking into like my security guards, like people that work in the kitchen, like bussers, like every position got affected by it. Yeah, I still talk to like a lot of them, like in my place of business. We're all close. We're all like friends. That's kind of how the industry goes. You bond with those people because your schedule is unlike any other job, really.
Yeah.
So some of them are doing good. Some are doing worse than others. I have found like a lot of them though are reaping benefits on unemployment right now.
That's what I wanted to know. Yeah, because I mean, I know that there was like the $1,200 like Trump bucks that came like I don't remember when in April or something, but
yeah,
I'm hoping that all of those people are able to get unemployment because it doesn't. In other words, it seems like a really hard time to go find another job somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, especially in this industry, I think yeah, a lot of the employees are like, I'm chilling. Like when it came back to like, okay, we're going to reopen and, like take it day by day. I asked some employees to come back and a lot of them were like, I'm chilling. Like I'm getting an extra $600 on unemployment. Like I'm making more money than I'm making at this job. Like I love this place, but give it to someone who's like not hurting as bad. So like a lot of the staff I brought back are people who for whatever reason couldn't collect unemployment or weren't getting benefits. So it worked out at the end of the day because those people wanted to work, and then some people just want to chill. Does
that have to do with? Because I'd imagine, aren't there people that were like, I don't know, the fear of the virus, right? I mean, there's that element too, right? We're kind of like, did you hear from people who were kind of like, I just don't think it's safe. I don't want to be at work.
Yeah. So I had one employee specifically that was like, I don't want to work. Like, I don't want to work. Like, I don't feel comfortable working. Like, I just want to sit at home and be fine, which is 100% okay. Like, in my opinion, totally getting it. But yeah, there's like a real fear. I think some of us that are even working right now, like we've had moments where we're like, this is too much. Like there are too many people here. People aren't following rules. Like we've had instances where an employee's like, I got sick. Like they're like, I'm sick. I can't work. So we've had like in our own establishments, like scares of people having it. Thank goodness, like tests come back negative. It's just like the cold or something like that. But there is a real fear, I think, especially in places like bars and restaurants where it's an airborne illness and you're like cattling all these people into this place. So we try and do our best to like make sure we're good. We're masked up, we're gloved, we're cleaning, we're keeping our social distance while doing it. But the fear is still like very much alive in that sense. Like takes one person to take their mask off for a second and cough and they could be asymptomatic, but the whole bar is now exposed to this disease.
I haven't been, and like I haven't been to any of these places, and I'm wondering like what's the vibe like? Does it? I mean, is it grim? Is there humor there? Do you feel like because it just seems to me like I feel awkward about it, and I would feel awkward, and I'm not sure what the right thing to do is, and I know all of us feel that way, but it just seems like what do you feel the vibe is? Is it getting calmer? Or?
I think it's like a subdued version. It's like light beer, I guess. It's not the full thing. It's hard to put into words because it's like, where I work, it's like the nightlife, like we have DJs, like, it's packed. People are dancing, people are drinking a bunch. It's just everywhere. And it's not that. It's very much you sit here, you have a server, which is like something we've never done in our establishment. We've never really had a server. We are just a bar at the end of the day. So it's a different experience, completely. And I think it is a little melancholy because you go out and you want to drink, and when you drink, you like want to socialize, and it's just, you have to be cautious of that. And, I think with the alcohol comes not being cautious about that, which puts a damper on everyone's day when you have to be like, hey, you need to go back to your table. Hey, you need to be wearing your mask. It's interesting because in this industry, I feel like we're the type of people that are policing it the hardest.
That's what I was wondering, is like, does that put you in the role of like having to be like Officer Buzzkill, going around the room where people are drinking and starting to loosen up and have fun, and then you're like, hey, like, make sure you're not grouping. I mean, so you don't do music anymore? Like you had, I know you were doing like, you had like punk bands and stuff playing in the back.
Yeah.
And that's not happening right now?
We're not allowed to. So one of the mandates involved was no live entertainment.
Yeah.
Are bars doing it still? Yes, absolutely. But we're not going to do that. I think it's just a situation of we want to create like a super safe space. And when you have bands playing and like DJs playing, people are going to want to dance. People are going to want to move around. We're just trying to eliminate that completely and like still have a fun environment as well. But you're in this tiny box and you gotta play within the rules of the box while like, yes, there's a global pandemic happening. People are dying, but hey, there's happy hour. Like, like you just have to.
How are the customers? I mean, on in general, because like I've seen so many stories, you know what I mean? And you see a lot of like social media shit where you're like, oh, this group of Karens came in, and like, but I part of me thinks that has to believe that not everyone's like that and that like most people are compliant. But what are you experiencing?
Yeah, I think it's been pretty split down the middle, but I feel like extremes of that, like you don't just have your like average customer, you have like your customer who's super appreciative and nice that you're open and like wants to support you and tip you well. And then you have these people that are like, my rights are like, this is fake, like you can't tell me what to do. And it's like, actually we're a private property, so we can refuse your service if we want, like we don't need you. So it's like split down the middle. I mean, like for like out of the worst part of it, like I had a dude spit on my chest because I told him to put a mask on.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
That's like attempted murder, man. Dude,
it's
how did you I can't imagine that.
I was filled with rage at that point. Because you have all these people like that don't like I understand that there are new rules and mandates, so there's adjustment period to that where people kind of need to like do that, and I understand that. But when you have someone who's intoxicated, who's saying it's fake, it's all fake, it's like, and I'm not going to wear my mask, and I'm like, no, you actually need to wear your mask if you want to be in here. And he's like, well, fuck you, and spits on you. You're going to react a little aggressively back, Yeah, I think also what we're seeing during this time with like the political climate right now is like people just flying their flags like of their beliefs. I've seen it at my establishment too. Like people just, I get the thing that blows my mind is like this whole pandemic is so politically tied too, in so many ways, and people are like putting those two things together. Yeah, where they're yelling about their political beliefs. Like we have a Black Lives Matter sign at our establishment, and people are like, "You need to take that down. That's political." And like,
I want to hear about this because the Black Lives Matter signs. It's funny because it's weird because when I look at when I'm online, I see like corporations embracing Black Lives Matter. Like Chase Bank is like, we believe in Black Lives Matter, like everybody. But then like in a town where like the one we're in, that's a little smaller, that's a little more white, that's a little more Republican. You get like, I don't see Black Lives Matter shit everywhere. And in fact, like I think if you wear Black Lives Matter stuff or display it, you're inviting like some sort of reactionary bullshit. And I haven't really noticed a whole lot of Black Lives Matter. I would say that the Black Lives Matter signs are on more hipster type businesses, right? Like,
Yeah.
I noticed the coffee houses and the different places that, well, certain coffee houses. We could talk about another
Certain
coffee house.
coffee house,
But
yeah.
either way, it's crazy because it seems like there's like a sort of young progressive business culture among like certain businesses, but then the rest of it, no. But what, I mean, have people really like said shit about your Black Lives Matter sign at your bar?
Yeah. So I mean, it's a lot of like of the older generation. Obviously, like you hit the nail on the head in our town. Like I kind of see Ventura as like this place where people see is really progressive. We're in Southern California, but it has like this underbed of conservatism that's like hidden really well if you're like just kind of glancing at it. But once you've lived in it a while, you're like, oh, this shit's everywhere. Like it's just like it's hidden to the untrained eye. For us, it's a lot of like older people or people from out of town that are coming from maybe up the grade from like TO or like Simi Valley and stuff. They'll just comment on it. Sometimes it's like passive aggressive comments, and then as it goes, sometimes they'll make more. Why are you a bar? It's no religion, no politics. Like you shouldn't be commenting on it. And I'm like, well, it's a human right at the end of the day. And like we're just trying to show our support for it. Like you hit the nail on the head again when you're talking about these like younger people that are working at bars. Like that makes a ton of fucking sense. Cause I think we're a little bit more liberal than the last generation. So it's just showing support and advocating for something. And I think a lot of these like business that are run by younger people or like the hipsters and all that, like it's a good use of a platform to show solidarity during this time.
Sure. I always smile when I see them, and they're like I said, they're few and far between, dude. There's like not that many Black Lives Matter signs in town. I think the people that are sort of focusing on how big the movement is don't recognize that there's still a huge pushback to it from the population that you're describing there. I will mention this place, Sandbox Coffee House. What's the deal with that place? Because there was like so for those that aren't familiar with Ventura, there's a place called Sandbox Coffee House. It used to be called Badass Coffee House. It's been a million coffee houses over the years, but like there was a dust up on social media recently because I think a customer asked the cashier to wear a mask because the cashier wasn't wearing a mask, and it turned into a complete insanity. Yeah.
So quick, like super quickly, basically what had happened was I heard about it because I'm in a Facebook group that's like a bunch of like the people that are kind of like running businesses downtown, and like we keep each other informed. And someone posted, and they're like this whole thing about like a customer getting doxxed by an employee there because the customer's like, hey, why aren't you guys wearing masks? Like, isn't it a mandate for you guys to wear it? And the employee freaked out and was like, you're a plant for the left. Like you're a plant. I'm not bullshitting you. Like I did so much research.
It's wild out there right now, man. Jesus.
Yeah. So that employee doxed the customer, like filmed her credit card, took photos of her ID, went outside, took a license plate number, and then gave it to her mom. And her mom is the infamous Gina Bacon, who like the controversy surrounds. She posted it online, and then was like, yeah, dox this person. Like, it's a plant for the left. Like, so someone saw that and went through her comment history, and it's a lot of slurs.
Yeah, it was just, dude, N-words, it looks like N-words, a fucking KKK, like literally. I mean, it's really virulent racist shit in her. I was not shocked on one hand because I'm from Ventura, but good God.
Well, this person's not from Ventura, I guess. They live in Ventura now, but her daughter works at Sandbox, and she posted all this stuff, and then comments just awful. I mean, you saw them. I'm guaranteeing it, like just awful comments towards, African Americans in general, being very racist. And then she mentioned in one of her comments, like, we need to support great American businesses like Sandbox Coffee. and she was like speaking on behalf of this company. So people saw it, got out, word travels fast in Ventura, and people just started like bombing Sandbox. Cause I guess they assumed she owned Sandbox Coffee. And I saw that and I like wanted to correct it because I was like following it. I was like, hey, like put on my social media, like this person doesn't run Sandbox, like their daughter works there, gave like a quick rundown of it. And then the owner, Todd Rizzo, who like didn't do anything about it. So the main controversy of that point was like, why are you letting this person speak on your behalf of your company and like tying it with racist rhetoric? B, why aren't you following WHO and CDC mandates as a establishment that serves food and has to follow rules such as sanitation and masks? And 3, why haven't you taken any actions against your employee who threatened a customer and doxed her, which is super serious. And his response was, I don't know who Gina Bacon is. My cinnamon rolls are fucking fantastic. Support my business.
Yeah, he seems like a weirdo, that guy. And by that, I mean someone who doesn't seem really adept at handling a crisis like this.
No, he was very much like, I'm the victim here.
Yeah.
And I was talking to like my managers and like other managers of businesses, and we're just like, you just had to address those 3 points and it would have been okay at the end of the day, you know, like, but you didn't, like, you lied to people, and now all this stuff is coming out, like, he sexually harasses his employees, he doesn't pay his employees properly, so there's just, like,
I got a bad vibe from that place, which is funny because I used to go there and get like, you know, coffees and acai bowls and like all that like kind of, you know, Southern California stuff, surf coffee. But the vibe in there was always kind of felt like, I'm not sure this is the best run business. But I did drive by the other day and see that the back of their restaurant got hit with the Black Lives Matter graffiti.
Did it?
Which actually, when this was happening, I drove down there because I was like, I wonder if there's a crowd down there, because you know that the politics. I mean, dude, we had a huge crowd for like the Father Sarah statue thing, like Black Lives Matter crowd. That was, I mean, our Black Lives Matter demonstrations here in Ventura have been impressive in their size and actually bigger than the like open up crowd that was like the MAGA people or whatever. Which that was inspiring.
I went to the 4th of July one downtown, and that was really good.
It was huge.
Yeah. Dude, it was kind of intense at one point, because it was like we were at the Father Sierra statue, and it was like all these Catholic do-gooders are like standing around, like linked arms around the Father Sierra statue, and it's like, you guys fucking suck. Like you're making this like a confrontation that doesn't need to happen, because I don't think anyone had it in their mind to tear down that statue. That's not what that march was really about. It was to keep Black Lives Matter in the forethought of people's minds.
And the statue is gone, just to update everyone.
Gone.
And there was a really funny image of Father Sarah's like wrapped up body. It looked like a corpse on the back of a truck. You know, the politics of this town are kind of coming out like more, like you said. You know what I mean? Like there's a connection directly from, you know, Ventura to all of these issues. This isn't stuff that just happens in other places. And I feel like this pandemic has made it really come out. What happened the other day with someone like got some MAGA people got mad and went on Facebook over your Black Lives Matter sign, right?
Yeah. So at one of our establishments, we had an incident, and I guess it's like the antitheses of what happened to Sandbox. There's like a weird correlation to that, because it's like, so we have a Black Lives Matter sign hanging up, and we had some people come in that were all trumped out, like whatever, like we're gonna still serve them. We're not gonna push them away because of that. But they started to get really loud and like talk about politics. They were like talking shit about the sign. They were talking shit about the movement in general. There's other customers there. People were getting offended, so they complained to an employee, and a manager went over there and just kindly talked to them, like politely, was like, "Hey guys, like, do you mind keeping it down? You're offending some people that are here." And they turned it into, well, why are you hanging this Black Lives Matter sign? Like that's political. And he's like, no, it's a human rights issue. And then they were like, well, what did the manager told me? Like, well, like, would you be telling us to like keep it down if we were wearing Joe Biden hats? And the manager was like, no one wears Joe Biden hats. Like,
no one cares.
Yeah. So
I don't even know what a Joe Biden hat would look like, honestly.
I don't want to know. Probably have some spelling errors in it.
Yeah, spelling his own name wrong.
Yeah, he suggested to them, like, if they didn't want to draw attention to them, maybe take off their MAGA hats. Nothing serious. He wasn't telling them to take them off. He wasn't kicking them out or anything. He just suggested maybe take them off, and they just threw a fit at that, and they closed out on their own accord. They're like, we're gonna leave, and he's like, fine, that's perfectly fine. And then when they're leaving, the dude like was like, fuck Black Lives Matter, like fuck your establishment. And
dude,
from the retelling, he told me the dude went to jump and like hit the sign down, but he was like too short to do it. So it just looked like he like hit it, like smacked it a little bit, and then walked out. And then they went on a Facebook group they're a part of and said, we just got kicked out of this place for like wearing our Trump stuff. Like, I had to point out the irony of the Black Lives Matter sign before we left. In this like group, I think it's like Keep It Red California or something like that, some like conservative group. But it's like a pretty ultra conservative group. And they posted that, and that's when the fire started. Like, I'm an admin on the Facebook page, and my phone just starts going off, and I'm like, what is this? And I look at it, and it's like 40 reviews just saying like, fuck this place. Like,
oh yeah,
like,
yeah. So you're like the Facebook page of the establishment got flooded by like MAGA people saying fuck this place.
Yeah, so they're just like, fuck it. They were sending like threats to the DMs, like just a bunch of stuff, and like the managers are freaking out, and like I'm just like, well, like you just got to ride it out, you know. But luckily, like for us, we have like a really strong engagement, so like a lot of people saw it going on, and we did a little things like our bosses didn't want us to like spread to Instagram or anything. Like our Yelp was getting bombed, our Facebook was getting bombed. They didn't want us to like post something on Instagram about it to like bring it over there too. But we like posted on our own stuff like, hey, we're getting like review bombed right now by these like MAGA nerds, like can you help us out? And then like the interaction from that was really good. Like a lot of people that have actually been to the establishment and support us came through and kind of like balanced it out. So it's really no harm, no foul.
I contributed to it. I would like to think that some of my contributions turned the tide, but I don't know if that's true. I went to the original Facebook post, and I pointed out that MAGA people it's ironic that they're such whiny babies that think they're the ones that are being discriminated against, etc. And there were a whole bunch of other people that were saying that shit too. Like it wasn't one-sided. There were a whole bunch of people that were saying, "You guys are assholes and fuck off." Yeah. Like if you don't like the black, they don't have a logical leg to stand on when they're saying you can't have that sign because you're a business. You can put a fucking sign up that says Black Lives Matter in your business. Like
yeah, I think just people feel so attacked by it. I always kind of think back to like this comedian who kind of talks about tragedies and like certain movements that are happening when they comment on like thoughts and prayers or like they're against it. They're just kind of saying, don't forget about me. There's like an individual complex that these people are feeling. And the whole all lives matter thing in general is just trying to de-racialize a movement and just like cause problems. Like it's not like a valid response to it whatsoever.
I don't think
if you ever been to rallies, the speakers usually say all lives matter because of course they do, you know, of course they matter, but we just want to make sure Black lives matter too. Like it's just this whole thing. And like, I think you hit such a strong point because it's like, yeah, like racial like views and like like political views are coming to a head. Like not only in Ventura, I feel like across the nation.
Oh,
there's such a divide now.
Yeah.
People are like really just opening up their closet and being like, yep, this is what I believe in. Like, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah. And I mean, to get back to the restaurant part of it, because it's like, again, I don't go and I feel weird about it. Like Claudia and I talk about like, should we be going? Like, because we are big restaurant people. We go to restaurants and we're like, we like to tip well and we like to go and like, support these businesses and support the ones that we like. But then we're also kind of like, I don't know if I want to sign off. And I wonder what the vibe is. Cause it's like, I guess that's what I mean by vibe is kind of like, how many people do you think are going? Have you seen a big reduction in like the people showing up? And do you want us to show up?
I mean, I would love to see both of you. It's been a really long time. I remember like when I was bartending in the pre-COVID world, when you guys would come in, I'd get happy because like you guys had become like friends at that point, and it was really cool. So to you, yes, I would love to see you, only if you feel comfortable about it. I'll stick you in a corner somewhere so you don't have to deal with anyone. When it comes to like people in general, I think when they like announced places could open back up, it was a fucking free for all. We saw a lot of people like bum rushing us basically, where we couldn't maintain it. Like we couldn't, like it was just too busy, and we were just like, we have to ride this out. Like, so
that's what happened with Fluid State, which is another place that they did something controversial, and I wasn't really cool with it, and I
wasn't either.
I mean, this is such a world that we're letting people in on. I hope they're interested in this world, because I do think this is being duplicated across the country. You know, this fight, but like at this place, Fluid State, not to shit on them or anything, but like they're kind of a brewery, not brewery. They're kind of like a bar,
like a tap room,
tap room,
pizza joint,
beer garden. There you go. But they I think during this period that you're talking about, when it's opened up, like during this period that was what I want to say, like, is this in April or May where they were like
late May?
Yeah,
May.
Where it was stupid, and I think we're fucked now because of it. But they were like, open up, and this place, Fluid State, got bombed with just so many people. And they did this thing online where they were like, all right, well, we're really sad about this, but too many people from LA came, too many out-of-towners came, and we really want to kind of make this just a place for locals. And so so next weekend we're gonna like locals only. We only want you to like we want you to like show your papers basically and show that you're from here. Yeah. And I thought that was just a wrong way to go about dealing with it. Although I understood the notion of like, fuck, man, we're like overwhelmed here.
Yeah, I understand the reasoning behind it. I personally really hate the locals only statement, because it's tied to like white supremacy background in Ventura.
Totally.
That was like a main issue I had with it. And not trying to like, I love that place. Like I'll go there still, but like it just hit me wrong too, because like the owners aren't locals, you know, like it just felt like misguided in my opinion. Like I understand like the reasoning behind it. Like we all got fucked like that specific weekend. What was it? Memorial Day weekend? We opened up
you're right.
So it just got like fucked. And like LA, obviously, like they're still shut down pretty hard. So like people want to get out. I just thought it was done the wrong way. And
it's that anti-LA discourse. Like whenever people say like, oh, I don't want LA crowds around, I kind of feel that's like a racial code always.
Yeah, I personally, like, my mindset was like, it is what it is. People are going to come up and I'll take their money. You know, like it's still that, still that philosophy. But yeah, they don't have any, the community embraced that, dude. Like Ventura was like, fuck yeah, like Fluid State, thanks for taking a stand, you know?
Yeah, I saw that. I was fighting an uphill battle on the boards with that one, because I was like, because I mean, I tend to go to the most extreme reaction, so I was just like, this is fucking fascist shit, bro. This is Fluid State. You mean KKK state? And everyone told me to calm down. But the locals only thing was popular. But that feels like a different era now, because we're not inside anymore, right? Like it's only you can only serve outside, right?
Only outside right now. Yeah, you can't be inside an establishment for dine-in, which for my property is fine. We have a huge front yard. We have a huge back patio.
That's right. Yep.
That's how we were running it from the jump. We're like, we're not going to let anyone in. That was like a decision I made, because I was seeing like the risk rates like elevate, and like the top one was like bar and like inside, you know. So I was like, we're just not going to do that. Like I don't want to risk that. I don't want to get sick. Like, do I get workman's comp if I get sick working during this time? You know, like probably not, you know?
Yeah, so
dude. It's about protecting, the customers and the employees as much as you can. And that, I think the outside thing's cool. Like our whole main street shut down. Like you can't drive on it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think they should keep it that way.
Yeah. I think they talked about it a while ago, where they like had a plan to make it just like a walkway which I think would be super cool. The only problem that I have with this Main Street moves thing is that we're not on Main Street.
That's right.
So everything's targeted to Main Street.
Yeah.
So everything that's kind of on the edge of it, or like a block or two away, is not reaping any rewards from people being out.
Yeah.
So it's more of an uphill battle for our establishment than like our other one, which is on Main Street, you know, so they're reaping it. We're fighting for it.
What's the what's the long-term prognosis? I mean, what do you got? What are people thinking? Because it seems like, is there an end in sight to like this arrangement? I mean, everyone's kind of on pins and needles waiting for the fall, like with school and everything else. Yeah. It feels like fall is like what we're all just like waiting to find out what fall will be like.
Yeah. I don't think there's no plans. There's no like, it's such like a free for all. I've been in contact with our downtown business partners who like put on the whole Move It Main Street thing. And I've been in contact with the city council members. I've been in contact with our ABC officer, or alcohol beverage control. Mm-hmm. And they're all just like, we don't know. Like, it is what it is until it isn't, you know?
Don't you think that, I mean, aren't businesses gonna like start falling off here though? Like, is there a danger of like, because I mean, I'm reading like in New York City, I know it's a totally different environment, especially when it comes to rent, but it's not like rent is cheap in Ventura, but like something like 83% of New York City restaurants just reported that they didn't make their July rent, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, how long does that situation, and it's not like, are we going to get a restaurant bailout? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if there's going to be a restaurant bailout, but I wonder, is that a conversation that's happening among you guys about like which restaurants might not make it in Ventura?
Yeah. So there's been like a couple that have closed down around us. I mean, Benchwarmers was like a bar that's been in town for 40 something years.
Did they close the Benchwarmer?
They're like, we're done.
Oh, that's heartbreaking, dude. That's like, Benchwarmer is like, I mean, you can hear what it is just from the name of the place. But like, I should post a picture of what that sign looks like even, because that is some vintage dive bar shit. Yeah.
That bar is like the perfect place to go if you have a buddy that's like, hey man, like I just need to talk to someone. Can we grab a drink? Sit on the patio. No one's going to bug you. Drink a beer, play some darts.
Sucks.
That was my favorite place to go to. Yeah, they closed. Hong Kong Inn's done, but they've been kind of on the fritz for a while.
That's another, what it looks like it's been open since the 50s.
Yeah. And then some other like smaller places like Steak and Hoagie, which is like another place that's, so I've seen like the trend that it's like a lot of places that have been around for a hot minute that kind of fell off.
What about Gigi's?
But even
Gigi, are they still Gigi's
I don't think they'll
Lounge?
Ever close down. They're like, from what I understand, they're like grandfathered into like a stupid rent, or like they own the building or something. So they're just gonna
that
exist
makes me
forever.
Feel good. Yeah, I'd feel weird without Gigi's there. I haven't.
That's the staple. That's like the bar everyone knows, even from a young age, because they drive by it all the time.
Yeah, and it's like from another era. Like, it's real dive bar shit in there.
Oh, it is like the dive bar. Other than the sewer, you know?
Well, that's what I was thinking about, places like that don't serve food, right? So they're like completely closed.
They get lucky. They can be open because they're attached to a pizza shop. Like, it's like the Jimmy Slice on Main Street and the sewer, like have the same back, like.
No way. I didn't know they were connected.
Yeah. They're owned by the same people. So they're open. They're staying open.
Whenever I've been in that bar in my life, and it's only been a few times, the sewer you're talking about, I've been probably the drunkest I've ever been. Like, it's only a place I've only been in when I've been like literally fucking insane. Like,
blackout.
Yeah, and they had live music in there too. It's just
it's a little hole in the wall. Like that's the same. Like, I've never been there unless I'm like fucked up.
Yeah,
like
well,
I'm like, let's go to the sewer.
It's
like,
not a place where you go sip a martini quietly. It's
no.
Madness in there. Yeah.
You drink a Rolling Rock and take a shot of whiskey.
Yeah. I'm glad that places like that survive. I mean, I'm just wondering like who will be the last men standing at the end of this, because it seems like you guys are pretty well positioned, and you have a lot of. Every time I go by, there's like a lot of people there. I mean, when I go by the Main Street moves, what we're talking about, this like closed area, it seems like it's packed like a lot to the point where I'm like, shit, I don't know if I even want to go over there.
Yeah, it's dude, it's honestly like such a just a free fall right now. Honestly, like we're just hanging on, you know,
Yeah.
like the whole consensus is we're not going to like profit. So we might as well just try and make our rents, which for our building is an insane amount, you know? So we're just trying to do that. So we'll see. I don't know. It's just very much like a up and down. Like we'll just see what happens. My job has become infinitely more stressful.
That's what I was wondering is like, how are you
Yeah.
holding up personally, dude? Because I think about the restaurant people all the time. And
Yeah.
like I said, like a lot of my best friends are people that I met in restaurants and I still, and many of them still work in restaurants. And they're the people that, for whatever reason, personal reason, because of my experience there, I still have like a kind of attachment to. And I wonder, like, how are you doing? Like, because this sounds like it kind of sucks.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not doing great.
Yeah.
Like it's just been like running a bar in general is really stressful.
Yeah.
And but you're kind of like have this freedom to kind of like pivot and do whatever. This has really put like restraints on it. I mentioned earlier, like we're all operating in like this small window and we're trying to like think outside of that to like draw business. But like the fact is like people aren't going to come out like they used to come out. For me, that turns into monitoring my costs, making sure everything is as low as possible, labor costs low as possible, me working more because of that. And then other things like my boss is getting on me about like, well, it needs to be busier, blah, blah, yada, yada. Like we're in a fucking pandemic. I'm like, I understand it. Like, you know, so it's a lot more stressful. I've definitely been like more stressed in my life now than I have ever worked in the hospitality industry. And I'm sure there are a plethora of people that feel the same as I do. I guess the only hope is like that there's a light at the end of the tunnel of this and like we can get back to normal at some point, because I don't know, it might get to a point where I'm starting to pull my fucking hair out over like little details that I have no control over.
Yeah. I mean, my workplace is a university and like it's going to be closed for the fall.
Yeah.
But we don't know. But I mean, I also like don't have classes, so like my own, you know, my own ability to make money has been limited dramatically by this. But again, I don't know what the spring is going to be, and I feel like there's a lot of people. It's almost too early to be like, I got to switch out of something or I got to like move to a different area of the economy. It seems like right now you're just kind of like, hold on, strip things down, and see if we can ride through this, because I don't really know what else to do. It is stressful.
I think for me, like specifically, like that's been like a huge thing where I'm like, well, like, is it worth it? You know, is it worth it to like keep going down this rabbit hole in this industry? I would argue that the hospitality industry is like one of the hardest hit in this whole pandemic.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just at this point where you're like, well, do I keep doing this? Do I do it for the love of the game? Or like, do I try and figure out something new, with it? And I think a lot of people are struggling with that. Like just conversations I've had with friends that work in this industry, they're very much so like, well, like, do I do this? Do I do that? Do I wait it out? Like what's the move, you know? Cause you touch on a good point there. Like California, what was it, like last week we had the most COVID cases per country.
Yeah.
I think that was a statistic. So like, but you have other places in the country that are like operating better and the spread is way lower than us.
Yeah.
So you kind of like look at that and you're like, well, do I move somewhere else and try and make a go of things there? Or do I stay in California where it's only getting more expensive to exist?
Dude, I think about that all the time. I'm like, we were thinking about like, should we, if we're able to, should we buy a house in California? And then we look at how much houses cost, and we're like, how is this possible to like buy a house? And also like you mentioned, like, I don't know why since moving here. I mean, we moved here in 2017. The Thomas fire happened. You know, the borderline shooting happened. You know, there's just
you brought the bad luck.
Yeah,
you brought it with you.
Just it's been raining hell since we got here, and now pandemic, which I know isn't limited to California, but yeah, dude, it's scary, and it makes me think about like, I think about you because you're I've mentioned this before. Like, you know, I see a lot of myself in you in terms of how I was making it. Like, I got out of college and I like waited tables and made good money there. And it was like and after years of that in my 20s, I was kind of like, well, I either stay with this and keep like waiting tables and try to be like management or something like that, stay in the industry, or I try to get out. And that's why I ended up going to graduate school. But I wonder, like, if other people are coming to those decisions, because I think now, I mean, I was doing this in the early 2000s. I think now it's even more so that like the economy is such that young people rely on restaurant jobs, you know, to like survive.
I remember having a high school teacher who was like amazing, like just an amazing teacher, like a younger guy, like super knowledgeable, super personable, like something that is like really needed among that age. And he told us one day, he's like, yeah, I wait tables at night. Like I wait tables at Eric Erickson's.
Yeah.
Like, so it always like, that always came to me, and I'm just like, wow, like these people are even like hurting. They're not making enough. And then like, I remember talking to a friend who's a teacher, and they told me their salary. I'm like, I make more than you. Like, that's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane for something that like, I personally was like, I would love to be a teacher someday. Like, now I'm like, is it worth it? Like, I make more than a starting high school teacher, which I think is a job that's infinitely harder than mine.
I don't know about that. They're both taxing jobs, really, in different ways.
Yeah.
Because honestly, like I've spent the last 14 years teaching college classes, and I'm not sure if I've had as like heart thumping an experience doing that as like being in the weeds on a Friday night at like a corporate chain restaurant. I worked at BJ's Brew House, dude, and it was fucking gnarly, like really, really hard. Like I was just getting my ass kicked by that job. I mean, I have bad feet, so I'd like come home and like not be able to walk, and like it was brutal. So when you say
those
like,
non-slips.
oh, teacher job is harder, I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. Like it's their.
I think the hospitality industry prepares you to deal with every shade of every human being.
Totally.
Like it develops patience in a way.
I don't trust anyone that hasn't worked at a restaurant. Really. I mean, that's part of my thing is like, if you haven't, and it really, the way I put it is Joe job. If you haven't had a Joe job, like I don't give a fuck about you because you don't have anything to tell me. But like restaurant work, you're right. It puts you, it's a physical skill. It's a social skill though too. Like you got to know people.
Yeah. I think everyone needs to work in like a job where you have to deal with the most irate people. I worked retail before for hospitality. That's even worse in my opinion when it comes to social interactions, because you're getting paid shit and you're folding clothes or stocking shelves for hours for menial pay. And then you're dealing with like weirdos or like people who are mentally unstable or like just Karens, you know, like you're dealing with all these people. At least in the hospitality industry, you're like cash in pocket at the end of the night, like worth it. Like I will say during this pandemic, when we first opened up, I made the most money in tips I've ever made for the 5-6 years I've worked in the hospitality industry. You know, like that night was crazy, but I almost made my rent in one night.
Because people were like extraordinarily generous that night.
Yeah. I think they're just like, we're so happy you're open. And then it just kind of like tanked after that. People don't give a fuck. Like I'm on a page of like, I actually got in like a little bit of trouble for this because I tweeted like, if you're going out in a pandemic and you're not tipping, you should go fuck off. Like don't come to an establishment. Like, and it's like these people, like including myself, we're risking our health to like, so you can have a fucking chicken sandwich and a beer. Like, and you're not going to like reciprocate that. Like that's fucked up. Like that's not cool.
Dude, there was a viral tweet yesterday of like a receipt of someone leaving like a nickel on like a $35. And they were like, they wrote, I mean, when I see those, I'm like, dude, what kind of fucking animal are you to like, like go and like you're saying, have a chicken sandwich and a beer that someone in a mask serves you, risking their lives, and then say like, take off the mask and you'll get a better tip. I mean, it's just kind of, it's just unreal. I have to believe that like not everyone who's going out right now is that fucking cruel.
They're not like, I would say it's like almost an even split. I feel like I've had really good interactions during this time where people are very respectful, and I've had like really like the worst interactions of my life. I don't know if you agree with this, but what pissed me off about that meme or whatever that went around, like, it was like 35 cents, and I get more pissed when I see like a 50-cent tip than a $0 tip.
Yeah.
Like the cents is like a slap in the face almost. Like,
Yeah.
you're not going to do like a full dollar. Like, come on.
Well, I mean, it's part of, honestly, when I see that stuff, it reminds me that there's like a streak of Americans, and maybe these are the people who have never worked these jobs. Maybe they have, I don't know. But there's a streak of Americans that like have a real like entitlement and contempt for service workers. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like they just have like a shitty attitude towards service workers. And you can see that in like the way that people are treated like basically human waste to go in and like be exposed to danger while you're, you know, eating that chicken sandwich. That part of it is kind of can be pretty ugly. Yeah,
I certainly have people within my life that are like, don't care about service workers. I'm not going to name names, but there are certain people where I'm just like, you realize I run a place that does that daily, you know, like, be fucking nicer. Yeah, it kind of blows my mind in a sense that it's like, I know these people at the end of the day are like, they just want some normalcy in their life. They just want to be able to go to a place and hang out with their friends and drink and eat. And that's totally fine. But like, I just don't see it as like the right thing, I guess. I feel like there are things that should be open instead, or like just that we're putting people at risk that work in this industry. I mean, like, I'm pretty in tune with downtown Ventura, and I know multiple locations that have closed because they've gotten a COVID case there.
No shit.
And people don't bat an eye to it. There's like so many locations, and I'm not knocking them. They're doing the right thing by shutting down and for the 48 hours that we're required to do if that happens. But I would just see that as a sign of like, is this really the right move? Like, when we have other countries that have basically beaten it, like that did it right the first time, and we're still struggling, you know?
Well, do you think, I mean, for me, the way I see it, I don't think this will ever happen because we have a horrible government. But like, do you think that most people, even including yourself that work in this industry, would prefer that like everything be shut down and you're on unemployment, or you're like given like a wage while this happens?
Yeah. I think it varies. Like, there's a mix. I'm happy to be working. I'm happy to be like, have that normal part of my life back. But I think it's kind of like this general morality, you know, like, shouldn't we do things right and close down and take care of our citizens so there's no worry of like having to open back up? Or I think
people being put in a position where they're like, I have to go work because I need to pay my rent. And so, like, in other words, they're there under duress. You know what I mean? It's like they would prefer, like, I'm sitting here, like, getting waited on by a server who doesn't really want to be here and feels uncomfortable. And, like, that's the part, I think that's the biggest part for me that keeps me away, is I don't want to go participate in that and, like, signal that that's okay. But then again, I feel like shit because I'm missing out on your place and, like, giving my business to the place, which I really, you know, like doing. So that part of it's really hard.
Well, while you're missing out on that, I'm missing out on those beautiful home cooked meals you keep posting. That were delicious, by the way. I think the bigger thing is, you kind of touched on it. Like, it just feels disgenuine. It doesn't feel like normal. It doesn't feel right. I don't know who comes and like is like, this is fine. You know, like, I'll take what I can get. It just kind of takes like the magic out of being able to go to like a bar at night and like meet people and drink and maybe throw up later or get Jack in the Box or something, like whatever the cycle is. It just doesn't feel genuine.
There's a romance to it, honestly. I mean, that's kind of a cheesy way of putting it, but like, honestly, for me, as I've became like, became an older guy that like likes to go to bars and have martinis and stuff like that instead of like drinking 40 beers and throwing up on the street. Like there's a romance, and your places, the places that you're a part of are cool places, and like they're places that I want to go and have a nice not a cosmopolitan. Why did I say Cosmo? That's not my drink. See, I don't even remember what I used to order. Manhattans and old fashions. Yeah.
Manhattans and old fashions. I think I made you some like egg white whiskey sours too.
That sort of stuff. Yeah. So, and sitting there having a drink and talking to people, and like there's a romance and a kind of feeling of like, wow, I'm really like part of something here. And it feels like that element is like not quite as strong as it used to be.
It's I think like a huge part of like the bartender customer relationship too is like connection and like communication, like specific, like even between us, like we had some really great conversations with you and your wife while I was making cocktails for you. And that's like my favorite part of the job. My favorite part is being able to talk to people, get a feel for them, make them a cocktail that I think they'd like. And then if they like it, they drink it, and there's just a good interaction. And then it's like having conversation too, like just talking to them, getting to know, like I've always come under the school of like a bartender should be like your best friend.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah.
Like this conversation and all that. So that's something that is completely out of the equation now. It's very,
because people don't even sit at a bar really anymore, right?
No,
they're like they're sitting separately at tables, and like you said, there's a server.
Yeah. And they just bring you your drink, and then maybe the most is me coming out from under the bar with my mask and my gloves and my face shield sometimes, and just being like, "Hey, how's it going?" And that doesn't. I saw like a meme the other day where it was like a photo of like these women having brunch, and like the server's like gloved up, like apron, face shield, mask, like, and I'm just like, this is some weird like post-apocalyptic shit that I just like don't subscribe to in any way. Like it's supposed to be like connection and like communication and like over a social environment. I think that's been like the hardest. I think the hardest part too has been like being a single bartender during this time.
Yeah, totally.
Like you just can't do nothing. You're like you can't.
I wondered about that, dude.
Yeah.
Like what that life is like. I was just like, God, like dating and like that whole world just seems like it's so different when there's like actual like a physical fear of because the dating is physical interaction, right? And like it's often intimate physical interaction, and that part of it is like it's I guess no risk, no reward.
Yeah, straight up. It's definitely like a dude. It's like so I've been on like the dating sites, and like I matched with someone, and they're like, yeah, I want to be responsible. You seem really cool. Like, let's meet up and grab coffee. And I'm like, sure, let's do that. And we're 6 feet apart. Like when we met up, we were wearing masks. And then like,
wow.
And then like we took the masks off, and we were like still 6 feet apart, and we were just talking. It felt so formal, and it just felt like, I felt like it was like an arranged thing, you know, like,
totally.
And, like I'm courting this person in such a formal way. So in the hopes of like sleeping with them or them being my girlfriend or like, and then we both comment on like, we're like, this is fucking weird. Like we both think each other's cool. We are cool, but like, yeah, no, like it's just a weird situation. So we didn't do anything. And that's just kind of how it is. I feel like there's definitely people like fucking during quarantine.
Oh yeah,
like,
no, I have no doubt. That's what the pod is, you know, like, and people probably have fuck pods. I don't know if they're calling them that, but there's got to be people that are making it work.
It's interesting time.
Yeah, dude, it's rough, and like if there's one thing, and I don't know if you share this, but if there's one thing like that, I don't know, that thinking about this conversation with you is like, you know, it's a downer, but it also like we've talked about, it kind of like brings stuff to the surface, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it like my best hope out of all of this, beyond like, you know, the nightmare of COVID going away, is like, maybe we'll learn something from it. Maybe there will be a renaissance of like, I mean, that description you're of a date with two people. Like, I wondered about that because I've been married for years and years. I'm out of that world, but like that, two people sitting with masks, having coffee, trying to get to know one another. I wonder, you know, if those experiences will drive, you know, further exploration of like what's good about what's good about each other, you know, because it's like we've talked about so much of the ugliness that comes out too.
Yeah, I think it's like I think there's things to learn from it. I've definitely like realized how important human connection is during this time, like when it's kind of taken away from you. And I've grown closer with like my roommates and like people that I work with, and like just even random people through interaction on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. So I think there is this like good connection that's coming from all of this, where it's like people are staying in touch and reaching out maybe more so than they would, just because we're not getting that day-to-day interaction. And it is also nice to like be at the bar and like see a familiar face and like you catch up and you talk. And so I think there is a good side to it. I think we'll learn a lot from it in our industry. I think definitely if businesses can make it through this time, there's gonna be like an even playing field for everyone. Like especially in Ventura, like everyone's fighting for the same slice of pie within the markets, you know, like especially like my establishment, we're meant for young 21 to 30 year olds, you know, like
that's why I don't go there.
Well, that's when I worked at the other spot that was more geared.
That's right. The other spot was a little older.
But I think there's just going to be a resurgence of like people coming out, and because they're gonna want to come out, and I know it's gonna be insane when that happens. Whenever like a vaccine comes out or things open up a little bit more, I don't know really. We're all in the dark kind of with what's going on, but I know once we get through it, I think there's gonna be people are gonna be very, very loving to each other.
I hope so.
And very like excited to see one another.
I hope you're right.
Alcohol will get involved and it will ruin it all.
Totally. Sean Lawrence, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I mean, this was a perspective that I've been wanting to hear from you for a while, kind of like thinking about sort of what is going on over there, because I'm just so curious, and it seems like it's connected. So these are the sites that people are talking about the most, you know, these like public places where people hang out, and it seems like there's a lot of different elements come together in a restaurant and bar during a pandemic. Yeah,
it's definitely like how it's been put is like, this is the new normal, which is like a phrase that's been getting thrown out. It's a new normal, and we're all figuring out as it goes, and it's just saying the strong will survive at the end of the day. But until then, you just got to figure out what works during this time and how to stay engaged with your audience, and hopefully that's enough at a certain point to get you through till when it's back to some sort of normalcy.
We'll keep on keeping on, man, and we'll check in with you again, because I'd love to hear when all this happens, because I have to think that we'll be sitting at a bar together at some point, being like, "Remember this? Remember what year was that? Was that 2000? Yeah, 2020. Yeah, that's when it was." Because I mean, if you live long enough, you see shit pass, you know. So I hope to sit with you in real life at some point and talk about all this stuff. But I'd love to have you back on the show again.
I look forward to that. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Sean. All right, huge thank you to Sean Lawrence. Thanks so much for sharing all that intense stuff from the world of restaurants and bars. I've been wondering what it's like, and it's just as much of a challenge as I imagined it, and there a lot of surprising stuff in there as well. So thanks, Sean, for sharing all of that with us, and thank everyone else for listening to the program. Really appreciate it. You can find more Nostalgia Trap stuff wherever you pick up your podcasts. But for subscribers, this week we've got some new stuff up on the Patreon. So go over to patreon.com/nostalgiatrap, check out and stay tuned for new interviews with Linda Tirado and Dan Bessner and Justin Rogers Cooper and a bunch of other fun stuff. Thanks as always, and take care. Bye-bye.